The possessed dollet was a rainy afternoon when Emma first found the doll. She was at an antique shop with her mother, rummaging through dusty shelves of old trinkets and relics from a forgotten era. The doll, sitting silently in a corner, immediately caught her eye. It was an antique porcelain doll with pale, cracked skin, blue glass eyes, and long, matted blonde hair. It wore a tattered lace dress, yellowed with age. Despite its eerie appearance, something about the doll intrigued her, so she begged her mother to buy it. Against her better judgment, her mother agreed. They brought the doll home and placed it in Emma's bedroom, sitting on a chair near her bed. That night, the house was silent except for the sound of the rain tapping on the windows. Emma, unable to sleep, kept glancing at the doll. Its eyes, wide and glassy, seemed to follow her no matter where she looked. She shuddered, but convinced herself it was just her imagination. The next morning, she noticed something strange. The doll had moved. It was subtle at first. Its head, which had been tilted slightly to the side, now faced forward. Emma asked her mother if she had touched it, but her mother shook her head, dismissing it as nothing more than a child's overactive imagination. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Over the next few days, the movements became more pronounced. The doll's arms, which had been resting in its lap, were now outstretched as if reaching for something. Emma's mother, growing concerned, tried to move the doll to the attic, but as soon as she touched it, she felt a cold, unnatural chill run through her. She dropped the doll, startled, and it fell to the floor, its head cracking. Inside the crack, something dark seemed to writhe, but before she could look closer, the crack sealed itself. That night, the horror truly began. Emma woke in the middle of the night to the sound of whispering. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding, straining to hear the source of the noise.
It was coming from the chair from the doll. Its blue eyes, which had been lifeless glass, were now gleaming with malice. The doll slowly turned its head to face her, its cracked lips curling into a sinister smile. Emma screamed, but before her mother could rush into the room, the doll began to move. It slid off the chair, its porcelain legs creaking as it stepped onto the floor. Emma froze in terror, unable to move as the doll crept closer, its small hands twitching. When her mother burst through the door, the doll had already climbed onto Emma's bed, sitting at her feet. Its glassy eyes gleamed with an unnatural light. The next day, Emma's mother tried to get rid of the doll. She threw it in the trash, but by nightfall, the doll was back on the chair, staring at Emma. Her mother buried it, smashed it, burned it, but it always returned. Each time, its appearance became more grotesque. Its porcelain face cracked wider, revealing the hollow, dark void within. One night, after a final attempt to destroy it, Emma's mother woke to find the doll standing at the foot of her bed. This time it wasn't alone. The doll's eyes rolled back, and from the crack in its head, a thin stream of black smoke began to seep out, filling the room with an icy chill. Emma's mother screamed, but the room was suddenly engulfed in darkness. The last thing she saw before the lights went out completely was the doll's face, twisted into a grotesque, gaping grin, as it slowly moved toward her. The next morning, the house was quiet. The doll sat in the corner of Emma's room, but this time it wasn't alone. Beside it was another, smaller doll, dressed in the same clothes Emma had worn the night before.